So should you buy iPhone 14 Pro or iPhone 14 Pro Max? Good question. They are essentially the same phones. It's not as simple as, Nick, bro, it's just a size. Pick a size. It's not that simple. I'm going to talk about my experiences with both of them to help you decide which one is going to be for you. A lot of people don't always know if they really want that bigger phone or if they want this smaller phone, but they do know they want a Pro iPhone. There are a couple spec differences and hardware differences, and we all know there is a price difference. $999 to start for this deep purple iPhone 14 Pro, $1099 to start for the 14 Pro Max. So a quick spec check here, 6.1 inch display. This is a Super Retina XDR OLED LTPO ProMotion adaptive refresh. So basically Samsung has made this display and it's essentially a really strong panel here with dynamic island. We do have 48 megapixel plus two 12 megapixel cameras on the rear to make up that triple setup. This also has 6 gigabytes of RAM, Apple A16 Bionic chipset. And here's the key difference, 3200 milliamp hour battery. Now, for the iPhone 14 Pro Max, you're looking at a 6.7 inch display. So it's going up 0.6 inches. This is also the same OLED display, that Super Retina XDR, capable of really high brightnesses on both of them. And this one does give you that same ProMotion smooth factor. So essentially the same display, just bigger. Also 6 gigs of RAM is also on board for the Max. I wish they would put 8, honestly, but it does have 6 gigs of RAM just like the 13 Pro Max, and this does have the Apple A16. And the biggest difference here is the 4323 milliamp hour battery. So you're literally talking about a phone that gives you well over 1,000 milliamp hours more in the battery size. All right, so let's check the bodies on both of them. So you can see, taking off to the right side, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is much taller. So reaching that power button is going to be easier for the iPhone 14 Pro. Also, keep in mind that the lighter the color you go with the edges, it's going to show some smudges. You can see right there the deep purple. I feel like I could see the smudges a little bit more. Over here, they do have the same type of antenna band right there. You can see the slits are in the same areas as well. The cameras do stick exactly the same off the body, so they are using that same camera lens. These bumps are pretty big. Like, you're gonna feel this, a little bit. So definitely keep that in mind. This is the largest camera ever sticking off a body of an iPhone. Up at the top, you're going to see the width factor is pretty noticeable. So that iPhone 14 Pro Max definitely comes out pretty much, obviously, more wide. Let's go on to the bottom. You'll see, let's go ahead and look at the 14 Pro. And then we'll put the iPhone 14 Pro Max here. You could see there is like a couple more precision cut holes on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but that's just because there's more space for that. Let's go over here to the right side and you'll see you do have the volume rockers lower on the iPhone 14 Pro as well. And we do have the silent switches up here. So overall, you're looking at a phone on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. This is the space black model. This is taller, 6.3 inches, 5.81 here. This is also wider, which we talked about already. And this also does have more weight. So you're looking at 240 grams versus 206. Now that sounds like they're both heavy, which they are. They're both little bricks in your pocket. This is just a little brick. This is a bigger brick. But at the same time, this one just feels it. Every day, you're going to feel this weighing down your shorts. You're going to know you got this phone around because it's a big boy phone. So I was using both of them, and I have to tell you, I do find the iPhone 14 Pro a much more comfortable everyday phone. But I love the Max for doing productivity-based tasks, media, and just if you use your phone heavy, I really recommend getting the Max. But if you use your phone heavy and you're on the move a lot, like you don't work from home, you're not like in one place a lot. You're on the go a lot. The 14 Pro is the definite move for you. The Max is great if you're on the move and you need that extra battery life though. So let's say you're on the move and you're willing to sacrifice the size because you can't get to a charger. Then you want to consider the Max. Now, when it comes to displays, both of these do employ the same panels. We talked about the spec already. Here's the deal. They're both incredibly bright. Like, these things can hit 2000 nits of brightness max. They can also peak at 1600 with HDR. So that's pretty bright as well. The big deal here though is the new dynamic island feature up there that we've talked about already on the channel. So if you are, using this for different things, you might enjoy the fact that, this is something that just makes it feel different than the past. However, I think that the Pro Max is better to use Dynamic Island because it's a bigger Dynamic Island simply due to the fact that the display is bigger. So if you really want to play around with Dynamic Island and you want to kind of get the best of its usage, you'll get more space here on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. So it's a little bit bigger there. Also, I always feel like even though they're the same brightness, you just simply have more display to enjoy that brightness. So you are getting more for your money with the display on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Not really in terms of spec, but you're getting more size, so that's important. Now, they're both equally sharp, so when you are, in the App Store, you're reading an article, whatever you're doing, every text you read on here is going to look incredibly sharp. That's no problem on either of them. However, one thing to keep in mind when we are talking about these dynamic islands is that if we go to the photos here, let's take a look at one of these samples I took on both of them. We go into the dynamic island, you can see, I talked about this before, how it kind of gets a little bit, it's right there in your face, you're gonna see it. But of course, every time Apple puts any kind of obtrusion on the display, you're gonna notice it more on the smaller phones simply because there's less screen area to distract you from the dynamic island. So if you don't like distractions on your display that much, I think you'll like the Max more. But if you're okay with it and you're just using this out and about, this will be fine as well. Both of them, to me, I don't really prefer them to a notch because the notch kind of flowed out of the display. At the same time, though, it's nice that these separate themselves from the prior iPhones, letting you know these are the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max. On the whole, the display qualities are pretty similar, but if you watch media, if you consume a lot of media, if you're using the phone all day heavy, I would get the Pro Max, even if you have to sacrifice that size. If you need a really bright display on the move, you're outside a lot, you move around a lot, you're going out a lot, you're just not at home a lot, and you still need a really strong panel, go with the iPhone 14 Pro. It'll be for you. A couple more things I want to mention about display is that typing, if you have big hands, your thumbs might bump into each other, like if you have big hands on the smaller Pro. Now on the Max, the keyboard is a little bit wider, so it's more enjoyable to type to me on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Hey, this is a test. So like, I feel like I'm faster and it doesn't respond any faster, but it just feels like less cramped on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. In addition, if you do take a lot of photos and videos, having the bigger display makes framing those shots a little more enjoyable for the Max. There is a con to that, however, on this display, and that's that everybody can see what you're doing. That is a massive panel. If you have the iPhone 14 Pro, it's a little bit more discreet. It's a little smaller. It's a little bit easier to hold. It feels more traditional point and shoot kind of style. So if you like that portable compact camera style, I think you'll enjoy the display more on the 14 Pro. All in all, both of them do feature the always on panels here. So that's going to be nice. Again, you're probably going to use up more juice on the iPhone 14 Pro Max because it's powering on the always on display on a bigger panel. At the same time, some people don't like that these are a little bit too bright. I hope Apple pushes out an update to make them dimmer. At least you get the feature on both. Now, performance-wise, I'm not gonna waste too much time here. It's no change. Same RAM, same amount of storage, same clock speed. Everything is basically the same here. Now, there is one thing to note. If you do go with the 128 gig, I believe you cannot do a certain like ProRes, RAW, or something like that. It's something with the camera, but the smallest storage is never the best one to get. It's usually not the fastest one either. I definitely would recommend a minimum 256 gig if you want the fastest iPhone experience out there. But both of these have basically the same memory, same clock speeds. There's just no real change overall in this performance. So this is just not an area of contention. Don't even pick it based on performance. Software-wise though, I do feel like the iPhone 14 Pro is taking better advantage of its screen. Like, yeah, it's not a huge screen, but I always feel like Apple is wasting space by not giving me a split screen on the Max phone just yet. I just can't believe they haven't done this yet. So it just feels like you have a blown up iPhone, and the iPhone 14 Pro just feels a little bit more natural. Like this is just the way iPhone was meant to be. Whereas with the iPhone 14 Pro Max, I feel like they should put a specific feature to allow me to split the screen. This is a massive 6-point-inch screen. It just feels like a larger version of the same thing. So do keep that in mind. Software-wise though, iOS 16 on both, and you will be getting these same updates for the same amount of time on both of these for the next 5 years. So pretty good on that front, but the experience might be a little bit better if you like to put a lot of widgets on the iPhone Max, just because there's just a bigger panel to look at those widgets. If you have issues with like seeing, text on your screen, the Max is going to be more enjoyable because the display text can just look larger. Yeah, you can raise it up way up on the Pro, but it just looks like you have more space here, just a little bit easier on the eye. So do keep that in mind with the software. And when you go into cameras, there's not a big difference here with the cameras either. They do have the same lens options, so 0.5, 1x, 2x, 3x, same macros. If you go over to video, it's got the same action modes up there, and camera settings, it's got the same ProRAW support. So they're essentially the same software experience. Is there any difference between the cameras? And we talked about this. No, they have the same setup. So I'm not gonna go out and make comparison samples of the same exact cameras. Again, I just talked about how the framing is bigger on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, but at the same time, you can get the same results on either phone. I would prefer to vlog on the iPhone 14 Pro just because it's more comfortable. But if you're setting up on a tripod or whatever and you want to take a lot of content, I do prefer the Max for its framing. Just take a look at some of my samples on these and you can kind of see how these cameras actually perform in the real world. All right guys, so here's some 4K 60 with the iPhone 14 Pro Max. You can see it does some really good video. Let me go ahead and back it out, or actually zoom it in a little bit. And you can see pretty good overall performance. Face ID is no different on either of them either. So if you are using Face ID, it's gonna be the same exact experience on both phones. Also, the battery life is something that we really need to discuss here. Now, how much better is the battery life on the iPhone 14 Pro Max? And man, did I blow that text up from my last statement? Let me go ahead and lower that a little bit. That's a little bit ridiculous. Yeah, but how much better is the battery life on the iPhone 14 Pro Max? And I can tell you that the battery life is substantially better. Like it's not like life-changing. Like the iPhone 14 Pro is still impressive. I was able to get through the full day easily. But with the Max, I feel like I can pound on it, use it a little bit more, really just go ham with this phone and just kind of like make it through the day. Whereas with the 14 Pro, like I'm not going to be going ham. I'm just going to be using it throughout the day and make it through the day. So I do prefer the Max if I'm doing productivity stuff, doing my work stuff, getting stuff done. Definitely I finish with like 60% at the end of the day. Whereas with the 14 Pro, I'm finishing with like 20, 30, somewhere around there. So definitely an hour or two better, it feels like, on the iPhone 14 Pro Max day to day with the battery life. So definitely pick the Max if you want that battery. You know, you're definitely going to get more on that Max. And not only that, because the Max has a physically larger cell on the inside, this phone will definitely give you probably a longer capacity life as well, just because you physically have more battery cells than you do on the iPhone 14 Pro. So both of them do have improved 5G performance, improved reception. Both of them are eSIM only now, and both of them do give you basically the same exact like speaker performance. It's not a huge difference. The Max may be slightly louder, but I didn't really notice much of anything. So I don't really want to keep going on and on. There's not much more to say. We have different colors here. What do you think of the deep purple? Let me know down below. Space black. I kind of like the deep purple. It does stand out a little bit more, but I love the space black for being a little bit darker than the graphite. In conclusion, this comes down to a couple of things. Are you on the move more? Do you not like a bulky phone in your pocket? Don't even think twice and get the Pro. Do you need more battery life? Don't even think twice, get the Max. Do you like taking a lot of photography and videography? I would choose the Max if I was you, just simply because you get to edit on a bigger canvas. You get to post social media on a bigger screen, and Instagram just crashed, but you get to post on a bigger screen. You get to do a lot more, you know, with this phone at a bigger size. So I think it's really definitely the one to go with if you're really heavy on that stuff. But I think everybody else is going to love this. And if your hands are just physically small, just don't get the Max. This thing is just going to feel like a monster in your hand. I forgot to mention that. If I could only choose one, obviously I'm choosing the Max because I have big hands, but I think you can't go wrong either way. They're super similar. And if you want to save that money, you're going to be able to get $100 off on the 14 Pro. But both of these are extremely pricey, so it's not like you're saving a ton. Let me know your thoughts on this down below. Do you have any more questions on the Pro and Pro Max? I hope this video helped you out to decide which is going to be the one for you. Subscribe if you haven't already. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.